Wednesdays mean Jerry Reynolds, and he's coming up in just one moment.
Audio Jungle.
And we've got a lot of NBA basketball to talk about with Jerry. How are you today, Mr. Reynolds?
Very good, thank you. Very good.
Yeah.
A little warm day here in Roseville, but got my walk in early. My strategery just takes over.
Your what takes over?
Strategery, buddy.
Okay. I'm very happy to hear that. Oh, man. What'd you think of the game last night, Jerry?
Great game. I mean, it's just a perfect game by Denver in that first half. And then Lakers really did. Darvin Ham is a great coach, great young coach. I mean, made some nice adjustments there, made it tough. And the Lakers, they had a chance to tie there with a LeBron three. They're late. So if you're Denver, you're happy you got the win. If you're Lakers, you're pretty happy because you can win.
Well, you don't get style points. You either win or you lose in the playoffs, and each game seems to be different from the previous game. So what do you, as a coach, as a player, as somebody on the Lakers, what do you take? You lost the game, but do you take all of that in the game too? Do you feel more confident going into game two? How do you look at that, Jer?
Well, I think there's reason for the Lakers to take game two, look into it confidently because they made some nice adjustments at the half, and certainly the Lakers were by far the better team in the second half. I think Hachimura playing the Joker really worked because then Anthony Davis could just kind of float around. Something that Jeff Van Gundy was talking about in the first half. That they just had to do something different, and really that did seem to work quite well. And then defensively, that made the Lakers a lot better. And really, I thought the Denver had to work awful hard for their points in the second half.
You talk about the Joker. He's unbelievable, isn't he? He just makes the game look so easy, Jerry.
Yeah, he's kind of one of one. You think of all the great centers down through the years, there's just nothing quite like him. There's certainly a Sabonis and Walton and Vlade, guys like that could pass as well or close to as well, but none could anywhere near the complete game that he has, with the ability to shoot the three and all that. I've always said, honestly, he reminds me of a 7 foot, 280-pound version of Larry Bird. He's a center that played like Bird used to play small forward. And, he has a complete skill set. There's no, and his stamina, his running ability is very underrated, as we've seen. And certainly competitive spirit. He's, for all those people saying he shouldn't have won a third MVP, well, maybe he should have.
Yep. Sea-Dog called my show on Listen App yesterday, and he thought the real key that the Nuggets needed Murray to play very well in this series, and he was spot on. He was very, very good last night.
Yeah, he was terrific, and they wouldn't have won without of course, they had some really good performances. I thought Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was terrific. They, and they don't win that game without all those guys playing well. Michael Porter Jr. So I think that's going to be a challenge. I think the Lakers have gotten better as they're going. And obviously when you've got two guys like Davis and LeBron, these Nuggets are going to have to really play at their best. And I think their being the home team is why I still give them the edge. Because playing at home in Denver is better than playing at home just about anywhere else.
Very true. Very true. Do you have any issues with the final few possessions of the Lakers, particularly that three by LeBron?
Yeah, I thought he really settled. I think it's something that he certainly had the ability, I thought, to get inside and draw and kick. Certainly Austin Reeves was making shots, and so, but I mean, LeBron generally makes the right play. I'm not convinced that was.
All right. Were you okay with the way the game was officiated?
Yeah. I think it's typical. I mean, they missed some. The game is so physical that they're guessing a little bit, but I think the right team won the ball game, I guess. So in that case, with Zach Zarba as your lead official, you're not going to get a better official.
No.
There is no
you don't.
better official in not just the NBA, but anywhere, as far as I know. So don't know how else you could improve it much.
And you're saying that because he's a diehard New York Giants fan, right?
That's exactly right. I feel like anybody that's a Giants fan, I mean, he's got to be good at what he does.
Jerry used
With
to hate.
some exceptions, I might add, but
Yeah. Jerry and I, whenever we were on the floor and Zach Zarba was officiating, he would come over to me, and Jerry would have to listen to our conversation.
I'd get to say hi, and then these two clowns would talk New York Giants football for 10 minutes. I was trying to want to talk about the basketball game. They're talking Giants football, man.
Oh man! When you look at that series, and again, it's only one game, but based on what you saw, though, would you be surprised if this series doesn't go 7?
I'd be surprised if it doesn't go 7. Absolutely. I think it'll take Denver winning all their home games. I think they can, and I think they're more capable of beating the Lakers in LA than the Lakers are in Denver. But we'll see. But I think having the home court advantage is likely to be the real difference.
All right, let's talk about Miami and Boston with game 1. How much of a chance do you give the Heat to beat the Celtics?
Not much. The only reason I give them any chance is just Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
They're really outliers. I think Spoelstra is probably the best coach in the league. And Jimmy Butler is just a great playoff player. Pretty average regular season player, but an absolutely great playoff player. And when you talk about guys raising their game, he is the perfect example. But otherwise, but I don't think they match up. When the two best players on Boston are in my mind significantly better than the two best on Miami. And now the coaching edge, but with Miami, they're just not very talented. I mean, it's just remarkable how they've got here, to be truthful. Without other than Bam Adebayo and Jimmy, none of those guys, those probably no other team in the league would even play much.
Anybody come to mind off the top of your head, like a Jimmy Butler, who you just characterized regular season, and then when the postseason starts, is just on a different planet?
Well, I always thought Kawhi Leonard was. I mean, he was awfully good. Now that he doesn't play much, but he was a guy that was always one of the better all-star level player that became the best player in the league almost.
Yeah.
And I think through the history of the game, I think you've seen that. Usually it's you find a secondary guy. I mean, the guy we both dislike to some degree, not because of personally, but Robert Horry.
Yeah.
Was a guy who always became a better player in the playoffs than he was in the regular season.
That's why they nicknamed him Big Shot Bob.
Big Shot Bob.
I mean, you think about what he did in Houston, what he did with the Lakers. I mean, think about the number of rings that guy has. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Lakers, Houston, San Antonio.
Yeah.
I mean, he was never the best player on any of those teams. In fact, he's about the 5th or 6th best. But it's still, it's remarkable that a player can fit in that well. Same thing could be said for Dennis Rodman. He basically a 7th or 8th man in Detroit, but a key 7th or 8th, and then of course a real key in the Bulls 3 Bulls championships. So there are guys, like you say, there's guys that will shrink, and then there's guys that will puff up and get better in those situations. And we've talked about some that just simply get better.
Garrison's got a very good point about Boston. They've been saying that, about Miami. They've been saying that about the Heat, throughout the playoffs, not giving them much of a chance. And here they are in the Eastern Conference Finals. So he's spot on about that. You're correct.
Yeah, I said I watched Atlanta beat them in the play-in, and I thought the Heat were done then.
Yeah.
And then they come back, and here they are. And I think that is a credit to, Spoelstra and Pat Riley. I mean, the competitive spirit, the Miami Heat way. I mean, there's legitimately something to that. And just another example here.
Yeah. Jerry, when we spoke last week, we were talking about Philadelphia. And you thought that there was a good chance that if the Sixers blew this series, that Doc would not be back. Well, the news is out that Doc obviously has been terminated. So I know you're not surprised, correct?
No, I mean, I think Doc's an awfully good coach, but I do think there's a point where, basically the Philly didn't come up big when they should have for the last several years, or could have. I don't want to say should have necessarily, but and so that's the way it is in the professional sports now. It's you got to kind of win the big one, and even guys that have won the big one, the Nick Nurses and Budenholzer and Frank Vogel, they all won championships, and within a couple of years they're gone.
2 years.
So yeah, I thought it's kind of easy to predict, to be honest with you. Doc, of course, I've said this on the old fashioned three the other day. I said that we do that. It could be a win-win for basketball fans, because hopefully Doc will go back to national TV, which he was terrific.
He was great.
And maybe Mark Jackson will get that job and get him off TV. So I think that would just be fabulous personally.
That would be a good trade, wouldn't it? That would be a really good trade.
Win-win, no question.
Yeah. And then Monty Williams, out as head coach of the Phoenix Suns.
I was surprised a little, but boy, those two, the way they ended the last two seasons. Yeah. I mean, when Dallas just embarrassed them, in a game 7 and not just beat them, but just totally embarrassed them. And then really the Nuggets did almost the same thing. And a new owner, a new owner's eventually always going to want to get their guys. I think, Monty is a terrific coach and he'll resurface, but sometimes players get tired of the same voice. Yep. And you can't fire the players. So that's the way it is. I mean, the big money committed to top players, really owners have no choice in some cases.
Then you get morons and a former NBA player, Steven Jackson, who brings racism into the firing of Monty Williams. I just don't understand how an individual like that is able to gain employment being a member of the media. It's hard to believe. It really is.
It really is, especially, it's like, was it racism with Nick Nurse getting fired or Mike Budenholzer? It's, you play that race card, you really, it takes away from any reality.
It really does. It is very sad, to say the least. All right. Do you think yesterday's results of the NBA draft lottery changes Greg Popovich's mind about his future?
Absolutely. If I'm Pop, I'm thinking he's probably thinking if they didn't get Wembanyama, it might be a time to ride off in the sunset, and I think it would have been. But with Victor Wembanyama, I do think he's a franchise changing player. Just health is the only issue with him. If he stays healthy, I think he improves them 15 games. And only the greats through the years have been able to do that. You can count them on one hand or so. And so if you're the Kings and Kings fans like I am, that it's a real concern because that's one more team that's going to be in the playoff hunt that wasn't last year.
All right, you just used the term franchise changing. Do you put him in the same category, since we're talking about the Spurs now, as the impact that David Robinson had when he went number 1 and the impact that Tim Duncan had when he went number 1 with the Spurs?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think when there's guys I put in that category, those two guys, obviously LeBron James, Larry Bird, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, but it's a small group that you look at where the team was before they got him and how much they improved. Most rookies have very little impact, even really good players. maybe a few games. Paolo Benchero, he was terrific, and they improved 6 or 8 games or something like that. And that's unusual that much. But so yeah, I do. I really think he is at what little I've seen of, and I've seen quite a bit or tried to, and I've never seen anything quite like him. I mean, really.
Seriously? He's that unique.
Yeah, I mean, he's a 7'3" legitimate guy, if not taller, that plays like a small forward, and certainly can block shots like better than Anthony Davis. So, it's like we were just talking about Jokić being one of one. This is another one of one that, he doesn't remind me of anybody other than, when Ralph Sampson was healthy back in his Houston days, he was so unique at his size because he could play on the perimeter and do things. But Ralph could never do anything near like what this kid can do right now.
Right.
And that was
especially when Ralph played for you.
Well, that wasn't the same Ralph, unfortunately. We just got a crippled version, and a terrific guy. I mean,
I like Ralph. I
thought the world of him. I mean,
I enjoyed. He had a very wry sense of humor. I think you would agree with this. Ralph was one of those individuals that came across as he didn't like anybody, but once you got into his little circle, he would treat you like family, and he was great to talk to. I really enjoyed my time being around Ralph Sampson.
I did too. And I mean, I really felt sorry for him because he worked his butt off to try to get back, but didn't have any legs.
Right.
And you can't play basketball without legs. And I mean, both his knees were just totally damaged. And I mean, I've never seen a guy work any harder to try to get back. And he had a lot of pride. And no, one of the best, really good guy, as you pointed out. Took you a little while to get to know him, but once he trusted you, and I understand that, it's kind of like a guy's been a college player of the year and a big star. So many people come at him from different directions. You have to kind of protect yourself.
There were so many players in that era. Of course, Jim Peterson was a part of that deal, and he had terrible knees too. And unfortunately, the medical technology when they were going through all of those knee issues is nowhere near what it is now. If those players were in the NBA now, they would have their careers extended by years just because of the medical technology involved with knee surgeries.
Oh, absolutely. And their size would have made it easier for them too, as opposed to a small guard that loses a little bit of speed. But a big guy, certainly like Ralph, I always say, go back with Jeff Petrie, when he was a player. I mean, he was a Hall of Fame level player that basically the things that on his body could have been repaired in today's time easily. And he'd had a career, but they just couldn't do it then.
I still do not understand why you retired when I look at what Al McCoy just accomplished. I mean, he went all the way until he was 90, Jerry, and he signed off last week. And you and I know Al very well. And he was one of the highlights of going to Phoenix, just to be able to sit down and talk with the great Al McCoy. You have any good stories about him?
Not really, other than just like what you said. I mean, just really one of the guys on the road you look forward to spend a little time with. I mean, he absolutely was first time you'd meet him or see him, automatically a smile came up, I mean, he was just such a likable guy and loved what he did, and it showed, and he was really good at it. Certainly one of the best to ever do it. And and I think that's why he kept doing it. And, it's sad how they treat the radio people now,
terrible.
Gary Gerald, of course, goes through it with the Kings, and all radio people do, to where they used to be on the floor or close to it, and now they're stuck up in the corners and almost impossible to see the game. And we were starting to get stuck up there a few times and more places, and it really takes away from the fun of the game. And that was one of the things that was the travel and that sort of thing. I really said, I need to move on.
Well, Al told me, I talked about this on my podcast on yesterday, by the way, that Al told me the last time I was with him in Phoenix that he had stopped going on some trips, particularly to the East Coast, because a lot of the arenas like Madison Square Garden and others that put him up so high, he said, I can't announce the game. He goes, I can't see the floor. And if I can't see the floor, how am I supposed to do my job? It's not fair. And it really bothered Al. Al was really bothered by that. I mean, it really hurt him that he was not able to do the games in certain venues on the road because of the location and the fact that his eyesight, and being, again, think about this. He just retired at age 90. 90. I mean, it's remarkable what he did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we'll ever see that again. I mean,
No.
but like you point out, I mean, he was so good at his job, he loved it, and it's too bad that he wasn't able to do it at the best highest level, because you just can't up there. And I know, certainly an all-time great as well, Gary Gerald, is going through the same things, and I know for myself, just selfishly, the 5 or 6 places that we were stuck up there, it affected me, because you can't tell the quickness of the players and the physicality of it. And I always thought that was something, being on the floor, I could pretty well tell what matchups might work and might not work pretty quick. But being so far away, I just didn't have the same feel. And that I found that kind of depressing.
But, my biggest concern in those locations was when we would do the open live on the floor and had to go up to Washington or our location in Philadelphia. I was just kind of worried whether you were going to make it or not, Jerry. I got to be honest. That's what was going through my mind.
I'll tell you what's going through my mind. It's like, I don't know if I'm even going to do this. I might just not even climb these stairs. To hell with it. Just go get on the bus.
Get on the bus, Jack. What is it? Oh, my gosh. What do you think about somebody asked this question. You think Dave Yeager will ever get another opportunity to be a head coach?
I don't know. He should. That's what's tough once a guy's been let go a couple of places. And certainly I think he's done good jobs both places, but there's so few jobs and so many coaches looking for jobs. I mean, you just look at, say, Frank Vogel, who won a championship, hasn't been rehired. Terry Stotts had tremendous success. He hasn't been rehired.
That surprises me about Stotts. If I owned a team or a GM, I would definitely, I would love to have Terry Stotts as my coach. I don't quite understand that one.
I've never understood it, and I think the Portland fans by now ought to be wondering exactly what we did here.
Yeah. So Phoenix, Philadelphia, I mean, they're attractive jobs, that's for sure. I mean, they're attractive jobs, and it's going to be very interesting to see the direction. The other aspect that hurts someone like Dave Yeager has been the recent trend of teams hiring former players with limited experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's well, the thing about hiring an NBA, it really just comes down to the owner. There's not a committee involved and somebody that the owner's kind of interested in.
Very true.
And it's like I say, it's different. It's probably, there's more steps you have to walk through, I know, to become a head high school coach in Indiana than there is in the NBA, because there's a whole lot of people involved in the hiring process, or in most colleges. But in the NBA, it's one guy. And often they're not the best people to be making those decisions. But I mean, he probably will have to continue to resurface. But it's like you say, Philly and Phoenix certainly are very attractive jobs. I mean, I would think, in my mind, I would think Nick Nurse would be a top candidate.
I would think so.
Either one of them, in my opinion. I think he's fairly close to the Eric Spoelstra level.
All right, so you and we both know Kevin Ollie from his time in Sacramento. Do you think he would make a good NBA coach?
I think so. He had success in college. Then he didn't. But he's been in charge of a top program. So that, along with his experience as a player and assistant coach at the NBA level, I think prepares him pretty well. And certainly depends on the team, as you know. If you have stars, you have a chance to win.
Yep.
If you don't, you won't.
Yep. All right. Speaking of stars, Bennett's is in that category. They're phenomenal. They're coming to Rockland soon. Of course, Roseville on Eureka and Lead Hill Road, Sacramento at what was formerly Banderas, Howe, and Fair Oaks. Don't forget about their weekend brunch, their weekend prime rib, and their incredible prime seafood and steaks. Over 50 different types of wine available by the glass. For more information, to look out the menu, get food to go, everything else, Bennett'sRestaurants.com. That's Bennett'sRestaurants.com. You think this series tonight, Boston, Miami, you think it's going to be a quick series? You think it goes 5?
I think it goes 6.
6, okay.
But I kind of got Boston in 6. I think, I just think they're the better team. But then again, I thought pretty much everybody that Miami played was better. So, they're hard to, Miami, whatever they've got, they're going to give it to you.
Yeah. What concerns me about Boston, they have been very Jekyll and Hyde in the first 2 rounds. And, that's very difficult to do in the conference finals and get away with that. That's why I'm a little leery on them. I mean, I know who the real Boston is. When they're playing well, Jerry, I think they're the best team in the league. I mean, I really believe that. I think when they're playing to their A game, I think they really would win a championship. But there are too many bad games they've had in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, that has surprised me. I agree. I on both fronts. I think at their best, they're the best team, period. But, I think sometimes the support, the support players really don't rise up like they should. They really count on Tatum and Brown, maybe too much.
Mm-hmm.
Not that Tatum is not great and Brown's near great, but at some point you just need, you need better performances from some of the support players, and there's games when they, they just don't get it.
I didn't watch the NBA draft lottery, but I'm surprised they were able to pull that off without seeing Sacramento there. I mean, the Kings have been a fixture at the NBA draft lottery. You've been both behind the scenes and on the podium, have you not, representing the Kings at the lottery?
I've been on the podium. I really wasn't behind the scenes. My wife was one year, and so I was interested in that part of it, because on the podium you really have nothing to do but sit there.
Right.
But I was thinking, with Wembanyama, I was almost surprised that, that somehow or another the Lakers or somebody didn't come up with him. But yeah, it's an interesting experience, and I think the league does as good with that as they can, especially now where the, all the tankers and stuff, being the worst team doesn't really always help you, as Houston found out, or Detroit found out. They had the worst record, you end up 5th.
Yeah.
And that's to me, they've done about as good a job, the league has, as kind of taking away the value of tanking as they can.
Boy, you're thinking about Detroit and their fans. I mean, you know what they're going through. The Kings fans know what that feeling's like.
Yeah, and I don't, they've had, obviously a first number 1 pick, and then Jaden Ivey a number 5 pick, and then they're going to get another 5 pick. They've had Killian Hayes was a 5 pick. They've got a roster full of lottery guys, and worst team in the league. So we'll see, and they'll get another lottery guy. I'm sure at some point they'd probably trade the pick and see if they can't get a veteran that's proven something.
All right. A lot of questions about this individual, and that would be Sasha Vesnikov. I have not seen him play, but I reached out to 2 scouts in Europe this week, and they both said he'll be okay, but nothing special. That was their take on him. I haven't seen him play. Have you seen him play, Jerry?
Yeah, a little bit, but I couldn't make a judgment on that. I'm like you. I've talked to a couple of people I really trust that have seen him, and quite a bit. And they say pretty much the same thing. They think, the guy can shoot, he's skilled, but would be surprised if he's more than a role player, a good role player. But
which is fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Right.
think he's an asset. That's what my feeling is. Yeah, if he's a top 8 guy, then you've added an asset to your roster. And maybe if he's more than that, then that's really a plus. I think the problem for the Kings, and just my opinion, is he doesn't fit what they really need. He can help, but what they need is another legitimate power guy. and there's no end. He's more of a small forward type guy, even though in Europe he'd play maybe power, but he's athleticism and
No
size
way
would
he's
probably
playing that
limit him
in the
in that
NBA.
way.
No.
More of a maybe a little more versatile version of Trey Lyles.
Yeah. The Kings do have the rights to him. So, Sea-Dog, it's just a matter of working out the financial terms to get him over. So, we'll see. But I think here's what I think. I think that fans who don't know much about the European League have Luka in their mind all the time. Luka, Luka, Luka. This guy's not Luka, okay? And I keep seeing that pop up on social media stuff. This is not Luka Doncic we're talking about. This is not even Bogdan Bogdanovic, okay? Be careful here, all right? Don't overhype this guy just because he's coming from Europe.
Yeah, I mean he's I think he's proven to be a good player. Obviously, had good stats there. Was on all European teams, but I mean, there's Luka was he's a one in a generation player over there. I mean,
Right.
So no, I think he's a guy that you could probably see being a starter at some point. Like a maybe a little bigger version or about the same size or a little bigger version of the Bojan Bogdanovic, not our
Yes.
bogey.
Yes.
He more in that line than anything. Not quite. He certainly hadn't developed quite the shooting ability yet, but could.
Have you seen Keegan's brother Chris play at Iowa at all?
Yeah, I've watched him a lot. I really enjoy watching him because he has pretty much the same demeanor and all, and he's left-handed. Looks just like Keegan.
Yeah.
I think he's a first-round pick. I think it's probably more of a late pick. He didn't have quite the, he's old. Not a year older in college. Played one more year in college and didn't have quite the year that Keegan had as a sophomore while he's a junior. So, but if
He should be on the board when the Kings selected 24.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's somebody. If I'm the Kings, I'd have to think hard about. I mean, I don't know. It's like anything. If you think there's somebody there that fits a need better, you take them. But just track record with Keegan would make you feel pretty comfortable with the guy. But I also say that it would make a lot of teams more comfortable with Chris Murray.
It's a great point. I mean, when you see the situation going on in Memphis and John Morant and some other players, I always look at red flags. We've always talked about that. And the character to me, yeah, you win with talent, but if you have talent, but you don't have all the other intangibles, you're not going to win. If you have a lot of talent and like John Morant's one of the most talented players in the league, well, and again, I know John Morant is an aberration. What I mean is there aren't a lot of players that are getting in trouble in the NBA like John Morant. But the point is, I think you look at all aspects, Jerry. You know this. You went through the draft process. You look at everything when you draft a player.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it, guys, because you got to know if a guy is likely to, be a problem, uncoachable, this, that, and the other. And I always think of, looking back at Gilbert Arenas, who should have been a Hall of Fame player, but got into that kind of wanting to be a gangster kind of thing.
Yep.
And then, Jarvis Crittenden on that same team was in prison.
Yeah.
And no, it's kind of one of those things you got to, take care of it. It does seem to me like Ja wants to kind of, play the I want to be a gangster role, and there's no place for that in the NBA.
Nope, there sure isn't. Well, Jerry, it's really good talking to you. Just so you know, I'm hoping that on Friday and Sunday you watch some of that Vegas Dallas Western Conference Finals in the Stanley Cup playoffs, so we can chat about that a little bit next week.
Well, I will be focused on the PGA primarily as well as NBA playoffs. So I'm going to have to disappoint you on that.
Okay.
But then PGA, I'll know just as much about hockey next week as I do right now.
PGA is good, Jerry. I'm okay with that. That's good.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. I'm excited. I'll be right there in front of the TV early in the morning.
All right. We'll talk to you next week, Jerry.
Talk to you next week. See you, Grant.
All right. Good stuff right there. He's a beauty, isn't he? Also, want to tell you about New Works Plumbing of Sacramento, locally owned for over 20 years. New Works has a fix for you. Just go to sacserviceplumbing.com or call the number on your screen. All right. New Works Plumbing, they've got a fix for you. Don't forget, Listen App, My open forum Wednesdays coming up in 30 minutes. Hope you can join me over there. Have a fabulous day, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us right here on If You Don't Like